Should Victor end his decades-long grudge against Jack on The Young and the Restless? It's time for Victor to move on and to join forces with a powerful ally on his side. On The Young and the Restless, December 1st, Victor's long-standing grudge against Jack Abbott was brought up again. He has always been jealous of his arch-nemesis, but he would never admit it. Victor is also upset with Jack for his past incident involving Nikki. Key takeaways: Victor has a grudge against the Abbotts, but he hates Jack most of all. Jack helped Nikki with her sobriety, but Victor sees it as a form of betrayal. Victor's grudge lives on. The Abbotts celebrated Thanksgiving at the mansion. Jack Peter Bergman had a lot to be thankful for this year. He was also grateful to have his family together. But he couldn't stop thinking about Kane's Billy Flynn AI program. Victor Eric Breton stole it, and he would do anything to take down the Abbotts. Even though he hates the family, he could use it against Jabal. This AI tool is so powerful that it could bleed any company dry. Ashley Eileen Davidson offered to speak to Victor. However, Jack believes that nothing would change. After all, Victor hates him most of all. He has harbored a decades-long grudge against him due to a combination of jealousy and perceived slights. Most recently, Victor hasn't liked the way Jack helped Nikki Melody Thomas Scott get sober last year. Jack nearly destroyed his sobriety by downing pills, which gave Nikki the reality check that she needed. It was the assurance she needed to get clean again. Victor thought Jack put Nikki in danger, and he won't forgive him for that. Time to move on. Victor should have taken the opportunity on Thanksgiving to express his gratitude to Jack Abbott for what he did for his wife. He helped get Nikki clean and sober. She hasn't looked back at alcohol since then. However, Victor sees Jack as someone who wanted to harm his wife. He can't see past his hate. What also doesn't help matters is that Victor can't leave business behind. In his mind or at home, Victor sees Jack as someone who's had an easy ride for much of his life. He was also jealous of Jack for having a strong father figure, which Victor lacked. He also resented Jack's success and connection to Genoa City. Victor had to take some cutthroat measures to make that happen. That's why he's always so eager to take Jabal down, because he wants to be the only powerful man in town. But Victor should be thanking Jack for what happened that day, and he should use the holiday or any other day to put their differences aside, because they could be a powerful duo against Kane. There are soap rivalries, and then there's Victor Newman versus Jack Abbott, a feud so fierce, so personal, and so endlessly layered that it has become the very heartbeat of The Young and the Restless for nearly 4 decades. This is not merely a case of two corporate titans clashing over boardroom control or battling for dominance in the beauty industry. No, this is a rivalry carved out of betrayal, wounded pride, stolen love, political sabotage, and a level of psychological warfare usually reserved for Shakespearean kings. Fans love it. Writers rely on it. The actors breathe fire into it. And new viewers, every generation, are drawn instantly into the magnetic pull of their animosity. The kind of animosity that doesn't fade with time but instead matures, deepens, and calcifies until it's indistinguishable from oxygen. Yet, in the year 2025, with both men older, wiser, and surrounded by newly shifting family landscapes, a question rises again, louder than ever. Should Victor Newman finally end his decades-long grudge against Jack Abbott? And more importantly, is he capable of doing so? What follows is an expansive exploration of their legendary rivalry, its origins, its biggest explosions, its darkest moments, and what a genuine truce would even look like. Because if Victor were ever going to lay down his sword, now would be the moment. Let's begin. Before Victor Newman was the mustache, and before Jack Abbott grew into the polished patriarch of the Abbott clan, they were simply two ambitious men headed toward a collision neither could have predicted would echo into multiple generations of Genoa City. Drama. Business rivals become blood rivals. The seeds of their feud were planted in the fertile soil of Jabot versus Newman Enterprises, the two powerhouse companies symbolizing more than just cosmetics and business prestige. Jabot represented Abbott history, family, legacy, pride. Newman Enterprises represented Victor's sheer willpower built through grit, strategy, and the refusal to ever accept defeat. The earliest clashes were about corporate power plays, hostile takeovers, financial sabotage, all the usual machinations of two men unwilling to concede an inch. But it didn't take long for things to escalate beyond business, because both men shared a fatal weakness: love. Specifically, the women who passed between them like torches lighting a battlefield. The Ashley factor. Ashley Abbott, brilliant, elegant, layered, became one of the earliest emotional detonators in their feud. Victor loved Ashley, then betrayed her, then tried to fix what he'd broken. Jack, protective of his sister, and resentful of Victor's manipulations, carried that anger like a badge. From the moment he saw Ashley unravel at the weight of Victor's choices, Jack swore he would never forgive Victor. Victor, of course, did not take well to being judged by a man he considered arrogant, entitled, and reckless. Their conflict deepened, corporate hostage, blackmail, and the first truly toxic war over the years. Victor retaliated with the precision of a man who believed he was not merely fighting Jack, he was fighting the entire Abbott worldview. When Victor bought Jabba secretly, he delivered the ultimate insult. He owned the Abbott legacy, and Jack had to swallow it. Jack's counterattacks were equally ruthless, eventually leading to the infamous moment when Jack walked up the staircase, Victor's framed portrait looming nearby, and uttered one of the most iconic lines in soap history. "You just don't get it, do you, Victor? You never have, and you never will." In those early years, their mutual hatred was white-hot, a volcano without a cooling phase, and every time a woman, a business deal, or a family member came between them, the war reignited without pause, a feud that became a lifestyle by the 1990s and early 2000s. Victor and Jack weren't just enemies, they were addicted to the fight. They needed it. Their rivalry had become a motivator, a measuring sticker, source of pride, a narrative they told themselves about who they were if Jack crushed Victor in a deal. It wasn't just business, it was personal. If Victor humiliated Jack in the boardroom, it wasn't victory, it was vengeance. This wasn't a rivalry anymore. It was identity. And that identity calcified into the grudge we see today. But can a man like Victor ever let go of something that has fueled him for half a lifetime? Hold that thought. To truly analyze whether Victor should end his grudge, we must acknowledge the severity of his past actions toward Jack, because forgiveness can't exist without confronting the magnitude of harm. And Victor Newman has harmed Jack Abbott in some almost operatic ways. 1. The Jabbo takeover. The humiliation of a lifetime. Victor's secret purchase of Jabbo remains one of the most cutting, symbolic wounds Jack has ever endured. It wasn't just about money. It was about stealing the Abbott legacy, spitting on the memory of John Abbott. For Jack, this was a sin that could never be erased. Victor knew that. He did it anyway, too, manipulating Ashley until she broke. Victor's involvement with Ashley not only damaged her emotionally but also worsened her mental health during a fragile period. Jack has never forgiven him for that. To Jack, Victor treated Ashley like a pawn. To Victor, he was simply protecting his interests, as always. 3. The Marco Onicelli nightmare. This remains one of the darkest and most controversial storylines in Y&R history. Victor orchestrated a scheme that allowed Jack to be replaced by a near-identical drug lord, Marco Onicelli, without Jack's consent or knowledge. The consequences were catastrophic not just for Jack, but for Phyllis, who was violated under the assumption Marco was Jack. This was not just a petty revenge plot. It crossed moral boundary lines that viewers still argue about today. Jack has every reason to still hate Victor for this. And yet, Victor rarely apologizes for it, at least not sincerely. 4. The endless corporate sabotage. Victor has spent decades attacking Jabbo, financially using blackmail to control Abbott decisions, sabotaging Jack's alliances undermining Abbott leadership, planting spies, misleading board members, and manipulating stock. Every time Jack claws his way to stability, Victor storms the gates again. 5. Turning Jack's family pain into leverage. Whether it was Dina's illness, Kyle's troubles, Billy's spirals, or Ashley's Victor has time and again exploited Abbott vulnerabilities. It's not personal to him, it's strategy. But to Jack, the Abbotts are sacred. Conclusion: Victor has been brutal, so should Victor let the grudge go? More importantly, should Jack even want him to? Because without accountability, forgiveness becomes enabling. Still, if there were ever a time in Victor's life to reflect on his past and choose a different path, that time has arrived, but only if he's capable of change. To be fair, and we must be fair, Jack Abbott is no innocent bystander. Victor may have gone darker and deeper, but Jack has thrown his own grenades, and some of them did real damage. Point 1. Jack's attempts to ruin Newman Enterprises. Jack has repeatedly tried to dismantle Victor's empire, sometimes legally, sometimes ethically, questionably, sometimes with outright sabotage. For Victor, Newman Enterprises is not merely a business. It is the physical embodiment of his trauma-filled rise from nothing. So Jack's attacks struck at Victor's identity. 2. Jack's alliances with Victor's enemies, whether teaming up with Adam, going after Victor with the help of schemers, or using Victor's mistakes against him during vulnerable times. Jack has always found a way to twist the knife. Victor sees that as weakness, leaning on others. Instead of fighting like a lone wolf, Jack sees it as teamwork, something Victor will never understand. 3. Their fights over Nikki. Jack, marrying Nikki, knowing her complicated history with Victor, still stands as one of Victor's deepest resentments. Victor sees Nikki as the great love of his life. Jack's role in her story, romantic, emotional, and supportive, always threatened Victor's ego. Even today, Victor bristles at any sign of Jack in Nikki's orbit. 4. Jack's own moments of cruelty. Though Jack has more integrity than Victor, he has had his low moments, firing a pregnant employee, manipulating Ashley during her breakdown, relapsing, and blaming others. Corporate rivals with misleading info can be ruthless. He just fights differently. Conclusion: they are mirrors, not opposites. What makes this rivalry so compelling is not that one is good and the other bad. It's that they are the same archetype, just expressed differently. Victor, brute force, intimidation, strategy through dominance. Jack, charm, negotiation, intellect, strategy through manipulation. This feud is not simply two men fighting, it is two men fighting themselves in another person. So should Victor drop the grudge? Maybe the question is whether either man can drop the mirror. Let's imagine a world where Victor and Jack call a genuine truce, not the temporary ceasefires they've tried before, which lasted only until the next corporate power shift. What would it look like? 1. A new generation requires a new dynamic. Kyle, Summer, Claire, Harrison, Abby, Adam, Nicholas, Victoria, their lives are all influenced by this rivalry. A truce could open business collaborations, family peace, shared, philanthropic venture stability. 4 young characters caught in the crossfire. Imagine Victor and Jack sitting down, not to plot against each other, but to jointly protect their heirs. It would be historic too. Victor is older and mortality changes. Victor may be powerful, but he is not immortal, and age has a way of softening old iron. In recent years, he's shown more vulnerability. He's more family-oriented, is less interested in petty revenge. He's more reflective. He's slowly stepping away from daily corporate warfare. Final act of peace could redefine his legacy. 3. Jack needs emotional rest. Jack's life has been marked by grief, addiction, failed romances, battles, identity crisis. A truce could offer him healing, stability, a sense of closure, freedom to focus on family, a chance to be the Abbott patriarch without Victor's shadow looming. For Genoa City, peace would reshape everything. A Victor-Jack truce would shift power dynamics. Decades of turmoil force other rivalries to the forefront, create new alliances, allow characters to grow without being pawns. It would be a tectonic shift in storytelling. But is it good for the show? Funny enough, peace might be healthy for the characters, but is it healthy for the narrative? Their feud is legendary because it drives stories, so maybe a truce doesn't mean an end, but a transformation. Now we get to the heart of the question. Should Victor end his decades-long grudge against Jack Abbott? The answer is layered because the feud itself is layered. 1. Victor should end the grudge because holding it harms him more than Jack. Victor no longer gains anything from tormenting Jack. At this stage, it exhausts him, it alienates Nikki, it frustrates his children, it distracts him from his legacy, it isolates him, makes him look outdated, stuck in the past. Victor's greatest enemy at this age is not Jack. It's his own inability to evolve. Letting go would be a sign of maturity, not weakness. 2. The feud no longer reflects who Victor is becoming. Victor has become a grandfather, a guardian, a mentor, a man aware of the ticking clock. His story can't keep circling the same battlefield. Growth requires release. 3. Jack would benefit tremendously, and that's okay. Victor has always feared that forgiveness equals surrender. But forgiveness isn't about losing, it's about freeing himself from the chains of his own vengeance. Jack would benefit, yes. His life would soften, his family would stabilize, he'd move forward, and Victor could feel pride in enabling that change. Point for fans deserve a new phase of this dynamic. Viewers have watched this war for decades. A new chapter, one of complicated peace, could be just as fascinating. Imagine a story where Jack protects Victor's interests. Victor defends Jack's family. They call each other out with honesty instead of hatred. They become reluctant allies. There's rich dramatic soil there. 5. But Victor should end the grudge without ending the rivalry. Here is the perfect middle road. Victor can stop trying to destroy Jack without losing the thrill of competing with him. Think respectful, Rivalry, moral competitions, battles without cruelty, dialogue without ruinous consequences, preserves the chemistry, evolves the story, and honors the characters. Final verdict: yes, Victor should end the grudge but transform the rivalry. Victor Newman should absolutely end his decades-long personal grudge against Jack Abbott. It no longer serves him. It no longer serves the story. And it no longer reflects who he is becoming, but the friendly or even uneasy rivalry. That should never go away. Because a world without Victor versus Jack wouldn't feel like Genoa City. The feud must evolve, not vanish. Victor and Jack are two sides of the same coin. Ambition wrapped in old wounds, pride cloaked in sophistication, legacy shaped by trauma. They have fought, loved, hurt, stolen, schemed, and survived each other. But survival is not the same as peace. And peace does not mean the end of conflict, it means the evolution of it. Victor's next chapter could be his most powerful yet. If he chooses letting go over holding on, not because Jack deserves it, not because the past can be erased, not because wounds magically heal, but because sometimes the strongest move a man can make is putting down the sword he no longer needs to carry. Victor Newman will always be a fighter, but even fighters deserve rest. And Jack Abbott, after a lifetime of war, deserves the same.